All right, we are back for number 5 of the Ohio Outdoors podcast with Jesse and Jackalope. How are you, sir?
Doing well, buddy. Doing well. Yourself?
I'm doing good. I had to laugh at your text today. Usually this time of year, guys are sending pictures of mushrooms and fish and ramps, turkeys, and
Yeah.
you saw a regular dinosaur today.
Yeah. Little alligator, 6 footer, right? I mean,
Yeah,
they're in the little creeks and bayous everywhere here. My boys have this obsession. They want to go throw rocks at them. I don't know, where that
great.
came from, but they like to throw rocks at alligators. So yeah, so we went out this morning. So let's go find us one and rolled through a couple areas and found that one little 6 footer sitting there. And there are no rocks around, fortunately. So we got to look at them a little bit. But yeah.
I've thrown rocks at a lot of things in my day, but never at an alligator. I
A
can get
big
behind
lizard.
that though.
Right. Yeah. They're skittish little things. I'm surprised it sat there kind of sunning and let us look at it. Maybe it wasn't done warming up for the morning. So
Yeah.
yeah.
We had a good little
So,
cold, and it's damp and cold here today. We've been super fortunate here last I'd say last 10 days. It's been beautiful weather. Still a nice day today, but it was windy and kind of damp and cold, so it felt more like spring than it really has the last 10 days up here. It's felt like summertime for us.
yeah. Well, you'll have that right this time of year, right? It'll bounce back and forth a little bit. You'll get those real cold mornings and kind of, what everybody's really hoping doesn't happen this time of year there in Ohio is a frost, right?
Yeah.
Because you're getting that 10 days and you're kind of going, all right, the ground's getting a little warmer. Is anybody finding any blacks or, gray mushrooms? And then, a frost comes along and it kind of just really puts a halt to all of that. Can really kill mushroom season. So hopefully that doesn't happen.
No, we get caught off. Of course, everything we got one. It's probably been 2 weeks ago now, but things were starting to bud out, and it'll be curious to see if there's any impact on crab apples, any of the soft mass trees. But I don't think the oaks were out yet. But last year we got a pretty heavy frost late when the oak trees were budding out, and that's always a wild shot about what's that going to look like in the fall. Does that kill the acorn crop? Did we just lose all of our acorns in April? And that's a game changer for guys around here in terms of if it's a bumper crop or no crop is a big difference for the way some farms lay out.
Oh, absolutely. When I hunted in Benton County and we've seen it, down at Stroud's Run too, the years where the acorns are in the woods and they're just plentiful, like you'll just about break your neck, walking up a hollow. The deer are there, right? But in years where there aren't any acorns in those woods, you will hunt high and low to find deer in that park. And which is kind of interesting because there's not a lot of ag around there.
Right.
You would think they would drop down low, hit into the ag fields, but they're not doing that in mass on thousands of acres. So it's like, where are they going, right? Or are they just not predominantly seeking out that, an acorn food source? So they're concentrated in kind of soft crops, right? Soft browse.
Yeah, I saw some heavy browse on the Greenbrier. Last weekend, I did about 2.5 miles looking for sheds and checking up on mineral sites and kicking around, actually checking out a new place that I'm hoping to get a lease on. And man, it looked like when we got that real heavy cold snap in the middle of January, February timeframe that they went to town on all the Greenbrier, and all the acorns that were left were under 1.5 feet of snow for a while.
Yeah. Not digging for those. And I read a story. I think it was an ODNR biologist. Someone had put out a story a while back, and it was around browse in late winter. What do deer eat when that hard January, February snowstorm frost comes? What are they eating to survive? And the response was pretty much sticks, leaves, greenbriers, junk. There's stuff with no nutritional value whatsoever. It's just to fill their belly to make them feel like they're not starving.
Yeah.
But there's nothing to get nutritional value from. So, which is fascinating because I, have walked through the woods and seen that greenbrier just snipped off. And I'm not talking like the new growth on the end, like they're eating the woody hard part with thorns in it, and you're like, what are they doing eating that junk?
Yeah.
That time of year, it's bark, sticks, leaves, and that's the only green thing really around. So
Right.
I presume they, eating color at that point. You
Yeah.
know?
Well, it's funny
Yeah.
you'd say that because I saw some pictures out of I think the guy was in Michigan, and he had a row of arborvitaes down a fence row. And
Yep.
those are supposed to be deer proof, but
Yeah.
he basically had a picture from Saturday and a picture from Tuesday morning, and the deer found it, and within like 3 days, everything that they could reach from 60 inches
Wow.
down, just trimmed
Yeah.
those, went from big bushy looking evergreen tree, and then they just cut in and trimmed right down the stump, the trunk, just to get
Yeah.
because that's all they could get to with that heavy snow that they had up north towards the end of January.
Man, that's crazy to eat that. I mean, you work with them, right? You go prune them or rub your hands on, you
Yeah.
smell them, and it's like pine salt, really. So
Yeah.
to eat that, I guess squirrels eat green pine cones and stuff to get the seeds. So I'd be no different. I assume animals are
Well,
weird, man.
yep. And it's got to be, we spring happened real quick here this year. Sometimes we have that big, long, drawn out. It takes a while for everything to
Yeah.
kickstart, but it really seemed like we rounded the corner and fired up really quick this year. So for the deer to be able to get back on the green browse, I'm sure they appreciate that.
Yeah. Yeah. I completely get it. My life is just upside down, really. I mean, as far as seasons go, trying to figure all that out. I don't know if I guess I'm in spring, right?
Yeah.
There was no winter really to speak of. There was kind of a fall, right? Where your pignut hickories and stuff. I've got one here that lost its leaves. And, I moved here in September. And then so I didn't really get to see the leaves on it. And then so I'm looking at this tree going, is that sucker dead? Because the rest of them are all green. They're live oaks and stuff like that. And yeah, no, it came back. And I guess this is spring because it's budding out and there's leaves on it
Yeah.
now. But something really strange happened. The live oaks down here, they have leaves all year. But about 2 weeks ago, they decided to shed their leaves. So they actually grow new leaves and shed leaves at the same time. So when you look at the tree, it's got really green new leaves on it, and then others that are just basically turning brown.
Huh.
So the tree is never bare.
Yeah.
But I have leaves in my yard like it's fall. I'm out blowing leaves today.
Yeah.
In April, it's the weirdest thing. So between that and the weather, I'm like, I don't know which way's up and down. We'll figure it
Yeah.
out, I guess.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
but
No, I can imagine it takes a while to recalibrate your internal time clock. And it's more than just like the daylight savings approach here, right?
oh, it
This is
is.
a totally different climate.
Yeah, yeah, it totally is. And like I said, moved here in September, so deer season was right around the corner for you guys. November timeframe, I just kind of got settled in, and my internal clock was completely off. Like my body knew, okay, this is November 7th is coming, which I've shot two nice deer on November 7th, and I should be in a stand. I should be in the woods. I've got group texts with buddies saying, "Oh, it's a nice morning. It's frosty. It's cold, and yeah, there's frost on the cornfield and things." And I'm outside in shorts and thinking about going fishing, going, something is wrong. I mean, something is really wrong here. I
Yeah.
don't, it's 85 to 80 degrees, and I'm like, yeah, maybe next year come November, I'm going to schedule that trip back to Ohio because I can't go through that torture every year
Right.
of it being 80 degrees, knowing that it's middle of rut
Yeah.
in Ohio. Yeah. So
Does rut time up in like early January down? Are you far enough south where it's actually stretching
yeah,
into January?
yeah. There's not a lot of deer here right along the coast. You got to go, a little ways inland. The more north you go, the deer population gets better. The big pine belt through the middle of Mississippi. There's deer there, but not, class deer like you guys think. And really the best deer hunting here is over in the Delta, right along the river from, Tennessee down to really the bottom of Louisiana, the top of Louisiana, bottom of Mississippi. And that's predominantly where your bigger deer are. But yeah, the rut is typically after Christmas, is when it starts. So
Crazy.
same thing though, really our turkey season comes in almost a full month and a half before you guys
Yep.
does, there in Ohio. So, I'm 2 weeks ago, I was hunting here in Mississippi, and I was about a week and a half into season already, and I'm flying back on the 24th,
Yeah.
which is opening day for Ohio, to go, hunt with Alex, and then of course come to the camp out. Um, but I'm going to hunt Mississippi, Kentucky, and Ohio this year, and it's different, man. It's totally
Yeah.
different.
That's going to be a good time. It's like a little mini turkey tour.
Right. What I should do is try to swing by, over into Florida, start a Grand Slam or something.
Yeah, no kidding. I've been soaking up the turkey hunting videos this year. I really feel like every year I get more and more enthusiastic about the turkey. I didn't really pick it up until my 20s, 10, 12 years ago. And I was coaching baseball, and that you can't coach baseball and hunt turkeys. It's just next to impossible. And so now that I've kind of put that behind me, and the girls are to a point where they can tag along if they want to, that I've been absorbing it. And so the hunting public guys have been down in Florida and Georgia, and I think they're over in Alabama right now. So it's been cool to see kind of the differences in how they get things done down there in the southern portion of the state.
You could, if I look at it again, but I have a long time ago, you could pretty much start in Florida and spend a week hunt turkeys, and then hit opening days progressively moving north. You could then roll into Georgia, and then into Tennessee, and then Kentucky and Ohio. Shorter time period once you get up around, Kentucky and Ohio. I think, Kentucky last year came in on a Saturday, and Ohio was on like that Monday. And this year, just due to how they do it, there's about a week span between the two. But
it's so nice that we open on a weekend now.
Yeah.
So nice.
Yeah. For that, I was just going to say, you guys now have, the Saturday opening of turkey season. Love it or hate it, right? I think it's about a mix. Guys like me and Alex, not a huge fan, right? Because we love to have I'll burn a couple PTO days to get out there on a Monday, Tuesday, and beat guys to the chase, and now it's like, every Tom, Dick, and Harry is going to be out there on a Saturday. So hopefully, Lord willing, nobody gets hurt. We'll see. That's my worst fear of it, and then of course it getting pulled back. But
it could be, especially with the rise in popularity of hunting on public ground, and we're not really under the COVID lockdowns the way we were, but there, a lot more people are working from home, which means it's a whole lot easier to be flexible with the first few hours of your day. So it's very likely that it, from a safety standpoint, public lands could be pretty hectic.
Right. Yeah. And, last year, COVID hit right before, here started to become a concern right before turkey season, so everybody was doing the whole work from home thing. And that was absolutely, for Alex and I, absolutely a factor. It seemed like everywhere we went, there were guys out turkey hunting, like you said, you just, all right, I got to be online at 8 or whatever. I can shoot out and, see if he lands in front of me. If not, head back to the house.
Right.
Or,
Yep.
9:00, or guys with a more flexible schedule, push it to 9:30, 10, whatever. Yep. And there were a lot of guys out there last year turkey hunting, I think just because of that. So
I'd agree. Yeah. I definitely slipped out more mornings than I would normally do, just because, I was stuck at home. Basically, I started my new job 6 days before they shut everything down. So, I had that whole stretch there for 8 weeks from the middle of March all the way through the first couple of weeks of turkey season, where I was home, and it was pretty easy to slip out back for an hour or two in the morning. If it was, if you could hear them and you were close to them, great. If not, you were back in front of your computer by 8 o'clock, and nobody knew the difference.
Exactly. And COVID didn't stop us either. I mean, kind of season was coming in. That's right about the time DeWine did the whole 2-week quarantine type thing, there in Ohio, and, man, social distancing and that. And, we didn't really have a good, clear picture of COVID yet, as far as fatality rates and spread and all of that. So playing it cautious, but that didn't stop us. I rode in the back of the truck. Alex drove, and we went from turkey spot to turkey spot,
That's right.
So you can stay 6 foot apart in the woods. It's easy. And
That's right. Well, you're wearing a mask anyways, right? You want the turkey to see your face to begin with. I mean,
it's perfect. It's perfect. Yeah. So turkey hunting is a socially distanced acceptable sport, I guess.
that's right. Yeah, as would be most things, except for I guess our waterfowl hunting this year was touch and go
Yeah.
because things were still, especially around Thanksgiving, it fired back up, and duck blinds, you're cramming some people in there. So there were a
Right.
few moments where we were like, well, I guess we're gonna find out whether somebody's got it or not.
Yeah. Start hitting people with a temperature gun walking into the blind like
Yeah,
that. No. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, good time of year, beautiful time of year in Ohio to get out and not only, find the good old morel mushrooms, but to dig the old stinky onions, right?
that's right.
To eat ramps until you puke and smell like them. I love them to death, man. I do. And
Yep.
my wife, not so much. She doesn't
Yeah.
care for them.
Same here. I had was it Friday night? Just regular old taters and ramps, right? I mean, you don't need to do
Right.
a whole lot more than that. Paired it with some venison backstrap, and that's about as good as it gets. That's one of my favorite meals. Uh, Given my choice between ramps and morels, it would be a hard choice, but I really love onions and garlic. So I'd be one of the guys that would actually take a ramp over a morel.
Yeah, yeah, I'm kind of the same way. I mean, turkey hunting it used to make Alex so mad, man, because I would stop and start digging ramps, or I would stop and start picking mushrooms. And one time we were carrying a turkey on public land, and we shot this bird, and we knew there were other guys kind of around us, and we didn't want to really give away our position, so we were trying to get out of there. And I kept stopping because I kept seeing the big yellows. It was late season, and I'm stuffing them in my pockets, And he's like, "Come on, man!" So. And I said, "Man, I will leave this turkey before I leave these mushrooms." That's that's how
Yeah.
I feel about it.
Yep.
So yeah,
I
and I
am
did.
disappointed. I am disappointed that I did try to transplant, I guess not transplant, restart morels.
Yeah,
I took two different tactics last year with trying to make two different kinds of slurry, DIY slurries that I'd looked up online.
yeah,
It didn't work this year. Who knows? Maybe those spores are in there and they're trying to do something. But we went and checked them
yeah.
yesterday when we went to check. Well, I got a camera over some minerals here behind the house, and we checked. I almost forgot that I had done that, and I experimented under a dead ash and then a live American elm, and no dice. But I thought,
And
man, what a
it's
great way to.
yeah,
Uh,
it's such a mystery though. I mean, why they grow where they do. And I've looked up many articles on it myself, and you get the same recommendations, right? The dead ash, the slip bark trees, and elms, and it's just, and then you'll find them somewhere, and a lot of times you're like, oh, okay, well, I get it, right? Because there's a dead
yeah,
ash with the bark falling off of it that looks like the other 50,000 dead ash
right.
trees with the bark falling
Yep.
off.
Yep.
So it's kind of difficult to know, but I think the old timers though, I've met a couple of guys that it seemed like they just always tripped over them. They knew
Yeah.
where to look for them. And one thing they always said that I kind of stuck with was, especially in the hills, when you find them at a certain elevation on a hill, maintain that elevation.
Yep.
Don't deviate 10, 15 yards north or south. Like they're there at that elevation for a reason. And that increased the success.
Yeah.
Some, instead of shooting up down the little spurs and saddles, and I'm going to go up top and look and down
Yep.
low, but just side straddle that hill when you find them, and you'll usually find more.
I got a little hidey hole. Most everybody around here knows that if you go to the AEP lands, that's kind of the jackpot in Southern Ohio. That place is loaded with them, and everybody's got a spot down there. And I found one where it ranges from sort of low and damp along a little secluded pond, and there's plenty of dead ash in there, and there's some elms in there, and you'll find them around that. And then you can drift maybe not even 10 feet in elevation. It's real subtle in there, but you get up just a touch into the higher ground under the sycamores, and it's a little drier, and find them in there, and you'll find some more grays in there. But it's interesting to see like the size difference in there. I'll definitely have much bigger ones down lower towards the pond. And then that, they'll, if you go up just that 10 feet in elevation, I'll find just as many, but they'll be half the size.
Yeah. Yeah. Makes sense. Makes sense. And, we down at the cabin one year, we had always thought, right, do they actually grow? You hear a lot of guys say, well, leave them. I'm going to leave them till later and see, if they get bigger. And then some guys say, no, when they pop, that's the size they're going to be. Right.
Yeah.
And so we had some where we had thrown kind of the fire pit ash over the creek bank. They had started growing there for some reason, and he put a stick beside them when they first popped up, and they grew, right. So they were
Yeah.
about this size when they first popped up, but they actually got pretty decent size. The problem was they didn't grow super fast after they popped. It seemed like the first 30% of their growth was like immediate overnight,
Right.
and then it took a week or so for them to actually reach full size potential.
Yeah. Huh.
And then they stayed there for about another week, I think it was, before the top started to kind of turn and cave in. They got real crumbly.
Yeah.
So your window really to get them from what we saw at full grown to where they're kind of deteriorated is only a few days.
Yeah.
Only 3 or 4 days, if that.
Yeah, I start to get a bit of anxiety this time of year because you're like, well, I saw my first pictures today on Facebook of guys that were one of our members, Buck Slayer, had a good day today. I think he said 110 was found today. Of course, he's one of those guys that it doesn't matter what's in season. If it's deer, big deer getting shot.
Yeah.
If it's turkeys are getting shot. He's finding sheds. He's finding morels. He's always all over it. So he's kind of like the litmus test when it starts going well for Seth. I start thinking, oh man, I got to figure out how am I going to get out there and start looking.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. And it's interesting because it's not the same all over the state either too, so you got to, if you're in Northern Ohio and you're watching those guys down in Southern Ohio, you're like a week behind really.
Yeah.
And that difference exists too between Central Ohio and even Southern Ohio. Just, it's not that far of a change in distance, but it does matter over time. And then some years, I've hunted Clark County and just been, just getting my butt kicked, and guys down in Southern Ohio are finding them like crazy, so it's very geographic. And even within the same county, I think sometimes, like there was one year where, on the eastern side of the county, a place where we turkey hunted, I was finding mushrooms like crazy. But we turkey hunted on a property on the western side, kind of west-south side of the county. And, traditional honey holes that I had picked up mushrooms in every year out there, I wasn't finding anything. And I don't know if it's, weather's so finicky. I think the only thing I could personally think that maybe, a band of frost or, kind of a low system came through there, or maybe it rained here, early in the spring when it was still real cold, but it didn't over here,
Right.
So
makes sense.
Who knows, man?
Right.
So
they are a strange thing. I am happy to report that my transplanted rams they've been coming back. This is the 4th year since I transplanted. Yeah. I think it looks like we gained a little bit of traction this year. So I've held off on digging any and just have continued to let them go. I heard 7, 8, 9, 10 years sometimes before they really start to take off. But happy to see that they were back up when I was out there yesterday. That's cool. I mean, when we picked up the farm, I was hopeful that, ramps and morels, and it's got a little farm pond on it, and you hope you'd be able to catch some slide bluegill and, come off with a feast. Well, there's no fish in the pond. I never found a mushroom, and I never found any ramps. So I at least took the ramps into my own hands and tried to transplant that. So we'll work on the pond later.
Yeah. And I had talked to a guy one time about that, about transplanting them and stuff. And I didn't know it, but they actually take a pretty long time to grow. I think you had heard like 10 years before they really start. But I guess they grow just like an onion. The bulb divides, and then 1 becomes 2, 2 becomes 4, right? You get that factor of multiplication. So I guess it can really make you appreciate it when you walk over that rise and there's a valley in front of you that's just a green carpet full of them. those have probably been there since, our great grandfathers were kids.
Oh yeah.
Um, and so it also kind of gives you that little more respect for nature and the outdoors, because it's just really, you look at it as an onion, but um, those seas of green exist. But when you find those tiny little patches in the woods, just really try to be respectful of them and take what you need, and
Yep.
and not dig up the whole little spot, right? Leave some there, because they'll continue to multiply, but not if you take them all. So
Yep. That's
and
what's
it
cool
takes so
about
long.
Rick and Ron's place when they send pictures, that that whole hillside at their place. They're down here close to me in Southern Ohio, and it's a carpet of green. It's just it's when they send the pics, it's one thing, but when I've been fortunate to get permission from them to go out and dig ramps a couple of times, and you walk up on the top of that ridge, and then you get over to where you can crest and see down towards the creek, and it's like, man, it's just that green, that color of green just pops.
Yeah.
It's just its own hue of that common color in the woods this time of
Yeah.
year, but man, and they just jumps out despite all the other greens in the woods.
Yeah. They're a sight to behold when you see that many of them, and really, really tasty. I guess they're a leek. They're not really an onion. I don't
Yeah.
know the difference between the two, but they taste like a cross between garlic and an onion.
Yep. I guess if you
So
want to learn, you can hop on theohioutdoors.com, short plug, and look up
yeah.
Jamie's thread where he said, I found a leak. And there's a little bit of
Yep.
a
A hint, right?
a hint right in there as to what you're getting in terms of differences. And quite honestly, looking at the picture, I had to stare really hard to see the difference. I'm glad he pointed it out, because
Yeah.
at this point, I'm taking his word for it. He's probably the master forager on the website at this point. So
I would say.
yeah, I think he is certainly if we have at least one master, he's there. We have multiples, I think, in some occasions, but he's definitely at the top of the heap when it comes to foraging.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, yeah, I was actually sitting here last night reading through the list of like when things become available here in Mississippi. Like mayhaws is one of them. They kind of come, their little red berry come on. They come in and here next 2 months or so. Pretty, I wouldn't say early summer, late spring, and then muscadines, which are
Okay.
A purple roundish ball. You kind of resembles a grape with a lot tougher skin, and you kind of break it open into basic snot on the inside. And there's no real way to describe to anybody what a muscadine tastes like, besides if a really, really rich purple had a flavor. That's what
Yeah.
what they taste like.
Okay. Yeah.
If you could taste purple, that's what they taste like. Not like a grape or anything else. And so they make a lot of things: muscadine wine, jelly, those types of things. But so yeah, they're later in the year, kind of June, July, August timeframe. But they grow on the vine, grow up a tree, so they're random through the woods, and they kind of grow into the canopy of the host tree, and then they fall from there. So you traditionally you're walking around looking for muscadine vines and shaking them and then waiting and seeing if they fall. Of course, you got to watch where they fall. It's almost like dove hunting. You shoot it, keep your eye on it, because
oh yeah,
it's going to fall. But
if purple had a taste, that sounds like you should have the munchies when you're answering that question.
Yeah, they're definitely different, but it would be almost like trying to describe to somebody what a persimmon tastes like.
Yep. Right.
There's just nothing that's close to a persimmon. It's got
Yep.
So you'd probably say if orange had a taste, I don't know. Right?
Yeah. A really bitterish kind of. Yeah.
Well, the skin, on them is very kind of bitter. So
I had
good old persimmons.
I work in an open layout space, a collaborative workspace. Everybody rents the desks in there. And one of the people that works in there with us, she's big into foraging, and she made some pawpaw butter for me this year. And it was pretty good. And I've had pawpaw beer, and I've tried them just kind of a couple different prepared a couple different ways, but this was something way different. And it was pretty cool.
Interesting. Regretfully, I lived in Ohio for 15 years, and they're in Clark County though, and I never made it down to Southern Ohio early enough to try a pawpaw. Never tasted one personally.
Yeah.
Because turkey season opens a little by turkey season, they're all gone.
Yep.
It usually, yeah. So I never really got to head down there and find them and eat them. But a lady at work, she really liked them, and I've been told that there's some, that it's not unique to Southern Ohio. Central Ohio has them too. I told there's some by the Old and Tangy River down by Columbus. But just never really found one in the old Clark Champaign ag country,
Yeah.
type place. And yeah, and then she told me they're kind of like a banana, but not a banana, so
No,
like a custard almost. Yeah, I don't know.
I wouldn't rank it up there. We've talked about lots of flavorful things, morels, ramps. That let's just keep it with the good flavors. And pawpaws are way down when it talks about what I can forage out of the woods around here. Pawpaws are way down my list.
Pretty down the list, huh? Yeah,
Yeah.
she said they had a flavor, but they were kind of bland,
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
anything.
Yeah.
So
And that's good.
almost like a papaya, I guess, right?
Yeah.
Like if you've never had a papaya before, and the expectations, right? You cut that thing open, you look at it, and you're like, wow, that looks pretty good. Or you've had the dried papaya in trail
Right.
mix,
Yeah.
and then you try to eat actual papaya, and it's junk, man.
Yep.
It's a giant hunk of junk, in my opinion. It's nasty.
Yeah.
So it's not sweet. It doesn't look. You're thinking maybe cantaloupe, right, or
Right.
honeydew, and then you get this pasty, mushy, like quarter gram of sugar fruit. That's it. It's not
Yeah.
even sweet. So
No. Well, and it's kind of interesting that around here when the sweet stuff's at the end of the year, this time of year it's more kind of the savory type of things. I saw a guy today was picking fiddlehead ferns,
oh yeah.
and you get the dandelion greens are up if you want to forage for those. So I don't know what it is about from a horticultural standpoint why that necessarily is. I would guess it has something to do with taking time for the sugars to develop and all of those things, and that's why
Yeah.
our year-end mass are higher in a sugar content versus we're rolling into we're well into spring here now, and it's more
Yeah.
the savory flavors that you're picking up in the woods. And this is by far my favorite time of year to do any level of foraging.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure. Yeah, speaking of that, you kind of touched on something earlier with the morel patch you got there is minerals. Time of year for that too.
Yep.
I was never personally a big mineral guy. I'm the $5 white salt block from TSC. Throw it in the same hole. We're done. Get out of
Yep.
here. That's kind of how I always was. I got plenty of pictures, and I didn't really go much past that. I tried the old brown salt block a couple of times, but you
Yep.
guys, and I know you for years, have spent a considerable amount of time and effort looking at blends and mixes
Yeah.
for minerals.
Yeah. It's I've been all over from the store-bought pre-packed blocks to the white salt to the trace to blending my own. I have mixed opinions. I don't know that I'm totally sold one way or the other. It was interesting that, and I'm not going to call anybody out or throw anybody under the bus, but I got a publication this past week, and it's from a very well-known, popular food plot seed manufacturer. They obviously sell some mineral blends, and the article was, "Do minerals really work?" And I had high hopes for reading it, because I've been doing this since 2005, and, science is evolving. People are doing more and more studies. People are taking more serious. And so, I'm hoping to read something into that. And ultimately at the end of the article it's like, well, we've been making this stuff longer than anybody else. So yeah, it works. And so there wasn't a whole lot of conversation behind,
Right.
is that mineral uptake really, at what point does that transform a rack? Does it really take a deer that's only ever going to be 135 and take him to 155? No, it's probably not. It's probably an unrealistic
That's
sort.
because I was going to say somebody call the Amish, but you can't call them. So somebody send them a letter and tell them to get rid of all those hormones and everything else. Right? They don't need anything. Just buy this.
Yep.
trace minerals and you're going to put out booners. It's,
Yep. And
I
it's
wish, I
basic
wish.
physiology that they're this time of year. All of that green growth and upstart is high in phosphorus, which really kills their uptake of salt, makes them seek that out because of all of the green growth being high in phosphorus. And so it's just an intuition that's driving them towards salt. They don't
Okay.
know that it's necessarily doing anything for them in terms of improving lactation for does or improving bone structure, whether it be actual femurs or what they're growing on top of their head.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're just trying to fill a hole in their gap, or
Yeah.
a gap in their diet based upon all of what their intake is in the springtime. Uh, that's why I think the blocks have worked well, right? I mean, at the end of the day, they're just looking for salt. If you're looking for pictures, they work really well. The white blocks do. I think the trace mineral blocks have worked just as well for me. I like the blends that I did just from a terms of establishing new sites when you're
Yeah.
going to mix up and really turn dirt and create a new site. The powdered mix really works really well, and then once you have that
Yeah. Yeah.
base, you can kind of revert to, and I have, and my two sites have been going on, one's been 12 years, one's 8 years, I think. And so
Yeah.
now I've just kind of went to the trace mineral block as um, the easy way out. But for the first 4 or 5 years, they were getting blended mixes mixed in over and
Yeah.
over and
Yeah.
over again.
And that makes sense. If you want to saturate that soil, that area, you don't want to wait for that block to melt, leach down into the ground, to get that jump start kind of,
Yeah.
it's fascinating because if you look at really well used mineral sites, that are just pounded every year, and you have to wonder, is it because, deer know, quote unquote, know it's there, but they don't necessarily pass that information down generationally to new deer, and then the whole family tree ends up using it. I think it's just more along the lines of the concentration that is there,
Yep.
right? If they find a really valid, good source of salt or minerals, mostly salt, um, more deer are going to come. More deer are going to come back to that spot because let's face it, I mean, they can find old, salt lakes that people have had out that the concentration may not be that high. But if they find a place that's really rich, I'm sure they don't like licking dirt any more than any other creature,
Right. Yeah.
likes licking dirt. And which is fascinating too, because of all the videos and the pictures I had, and I know somebody's going to throw up probably 50 videos to show this, but I never actually physically saw them lick the block itself. They were
Right.
always licking at the base of it or the bottom or the stump or something.
Yep.
Never just the salt, but
same. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I can't recall. Yeah. I mean, in all the years and thousands of pictures that I've ever seen them with their tongue right on the block. When we did the walkabout on our place there a month or so ago, we went by. I have a natural steep on the side of the hill that is really metallic, high iron content. I'd really like to have the water out of it sampled, but I'll have deer that will hit my salt block, which is 100 yards away on the other side of the creek, and then I'll get the same deer walking up the trail by that, stopping and hitting that again, as if they know, like, okay, there's something different in this that would be good for my body to intake
Yeah.
at this time too. And so they have
Right.
that salt intake at one spot, and then here's this other really minerally discharge basically from the side of the hill that they also go to.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting that they would pass over the creek to get to that to drink it. One thing I did notice, and at one point I had a lot of cameras and a lot of salt blocks out. The ones that always performed the best were very close to water, and I don't mean within 50 yards. I mean right up on the bank. 5 feet, it's right there. And they would always, in videos I would see them. They would minerals, then water. And I guess we're the same way, right? We eat something really salty, we want something to drink. But yeah.
I've done best
I got a little
when,
bit of a cold here, so
yeah, when I've done best when they've been close to water and they've been in good cover. The first place that I picked out on the farm in 2005-6 time frame when I first started one was in a super thick area that had just a real low lying area right next to it that would hold water. And then eventually, because of some of the EHD outbreaks and everything else, I decided I didn't really want to attract deer to a spot that was just holding standing water. So we actually kind of dug it out so
yep,
that
yep,
that would drain, and moved the mineral site about 75 yards down the hill right next to the creek itself, so that we weren't encouraging any stagnant water intake. And the same
yeah,
thing here behind the house. It's right next to the creek. It's just easy come, easy go. If you just drop a salt block out in the middle of the woods up on the ridge, they might hit it, but I don't think they take to it the same way unless,
yeah,
like you said, you eat something salty, you want to get a drink.
yeah, yeah. And one other point that I always kind of wanted to point out on the forum too is this time of year, you know, minerals and then turkey season coming in. The Ohio Department of Natural Resources does consider salt to be bait for turkey.
Yep.
And I can't remember exactly, but I think it's considered baited for, I can't remember how long, but it's 14 days, something
Yep.
like that,
Yep.
7 days, I forget. Might even be 30. So don't nobody quote me on that, please go look it up. But there is a period of time where once that is removed, an area is considered baited. So I don't think if you have like an established mineral site there when there's just dirt that
Yep.
counts, or should count. I guess technically there is a higher salt concentration there, but definitely if you're going and dumping white salt blocks, powdered minerals, those types of things, probably wait till after turkey season to do that, because
Yep.
technically it's considered baiting. I don't know
Yeah.
why turkeys. I've never ever gotten a picture of a turkey scratching around a mineral lick or a salt
Nope.
block personally, but
Nope.
it mentions in the regs, in the turkey hunting regs, that it is
Yeah.
considered bait. So
Yeah, I can't. I think it is 14 days, but again, don't quote us. Go do your own research on that. We do our best to stay up to it, but there's all. I don't want you to go get popped hunting over.
yeah. And
Yeah,
if
I'm
you
with
do,
you. Yeah, if
yeah,
you do,
yeah, let me know. I'd like to laugh at you.
yes,
So
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. I
yeah,
want to know what county you're in and what your game warden's name is, because I'm thinking maybe you already had. I think you were already on the radar if you got popped for shooting
already.
turkeys near a salt block.
Yeah. Now, a couple of buddies in West Virginia would always have a kind of a camp out for turkey season is a big thing for them. And these are old timers. And, they would always have a big oyster bake. So they would bring in oysters and a whole bunch of other stuff. And, they would cook them up and, eat a lot of them raw. They would also do a lot of them, cook them in the half shell. And they would just take the shells and throw them off down back behind the hill, or take them down the road, throw them. And one of them did get a ticket about 8 years ago for hunting over what was considered bait because it was crushed oyster shells.
Oh yeah,
And that is mentioned. They do. I've seen. I don't know if it's the West Virginia reg or the Ohio reg, but it is mentioned as being that. And I never would have thought in 1,000 years, but
right.
I'm not a poultry guy, but I guess
Yep.
I think they sell them in TSC or something
Yep.
for egg producing.
Yep.
But
Grit. Yep.
yeah, so crushed oyster shells to get you a ticket in West Virginia. So watch
Yeah.
out.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
with you. I can't imagine. I've never. I'm just trying to think. I've probably gotten pictures of turkey walking by mineral licks, but I've
yep.
never seen them pay attention to it intentionally.
I had them stop and scratch around anything like that.
Yeah.
So
I found
yeah,
when we were doing our scouting last week, I found I'm hoping again if I can get this place leased. It's I've always known that the good turkey hunting was kind of on that side of the fence.
yep,
And I was kind of I knew at one point too that the guys that were leasing that place had a pretty well established mineral lick actually at the site of where the farmer used to do so for cattle. And
yep,
so I was standing there kind of admiring that old mineral lick, and I'd never really been much further past it. I walked past it and kind of up the hill about 75 yards, and to get up there, and along the fence line, they had carved out about I'd say a 20-yard tractor lane through this flat top that goes from one bottom field where the mineral is to another kind of hillside. And man, there was scratching through there, drag marks, turkey tracks. It was
Nice,
just like
nice.
um, just one of the spots that you want to find, and okay, I just come here. If I don't know anything else, and we talked about this
Yep.
in the last episode with Alex, I'm a lazy turkey hunter in terms of scouting. I very rarely roost them, and I don't do a lot of scouting. I just go show up, and
Yeah.
it was one of those spots that if I guess if turkeys are hitting minerals, that was a good spot to try it.
Right.
Because
Yeah.
it was
Yeah.
immediately adjacent to a mineral lake, but I don't think that's why they were there.
Right. Yeah. No, probably the nice tractor path and everything else. I tried to sneak one over one time. I was hunting a property that and it didn't have cattle on it, but previously it was a cattle farm. And that spring I showed up and she had leased out the field again for somebody to start running cattle. And so the whole front half of the property was, grass field for cattle in it. And I was there to put out, a salt block. And I thought, man, these cows, I know. And I went back and sure enough, they had been in my old mineral lick and
Yeah.
stuff, just had it like a wallow back in there. So I said, well, what do I do now? Right. I'm all dressed up for the prom. I got like 4 salt blocks in the back of the truck. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to be smart and I'm going to go in the thickest, nastiest, place of bedding that I think I can find. And that's where I'm going to put a salt block. And no, they're not going to find it in there because, the cows don't really go in there. It's all, honeysuckle bush and everything else. And I put a camera over it and I came back a week later and it looked like a bomb had gone off in the middle of those woods. Those cattle had found it and they stayed around licking and licking and licking until it was like a giant lollipop for them, I guess. But the whole card was full and I had nothing but pictures of cows. And that bedding area was a bedding area no more.
No more.
And I got to thinking, like, how in the world? The only thing I can think is they must have smelled it, right?
Yeah.
They must have smelled that salt in the air and knew it was in there because they had been there for a while and they had never really gone in that thick stuff all around it, but never in it. Yeah, they got in there. So you won't pull one over on them.
No. Minerals will be one of those things that I'll always do. They're great for pictures, if nothing else. I think despite my disappointment in that article kind of just being a very cleverly written sales ploy, that there's plenty of other science out there that points to it being a worthwhile investment. If I had my choice, if somebody came to me and said I could plant a food plot or I could put minerals out, I can plant a 1/4 acre food plot or I can put minerals out. I'd probably tell you to put the minerals out. At the end of the day, just depending on where you are. And on our farm, the minerals have probably had a bigger impact on the herd health than what food plots have, because I get minimal usage on my food plot, but my minerals are always pounded. I mean, all year long. And does more than. It's been an interesting transition because early on, when we did have kind of more bucks, more older age class bucks running around every year, that was a common theme. There was the buck pictures, and the does were interlaced. But as the herd dynamics have really changed, I've noticed that now it's mature does and almost only mature does hitting it. But every good mature kind of alpha doe that I think I have, and we'll be running 4 or 5 family groups in and around this area, you can count on being clockwork, and they're going to be in there just about every day, like routine.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's definitely something there that they need, right? And I think you had touched on it earlier with the phosphorus in the green browse, and that salt to kind of neutralize or negate that, if you will. But I don't think anybody's saying there's no health benefit to minerals, right? We're not the FDA. They're going to sit there and say, vitamins do you no good. Obviously, they do, right?
Yep.
What it does is yet kind of to be told. I don't know of a study that I've seen that's gone out there and said, hey, here's one that, had supplements, mineral supplements, and here's one that didn't. Obviously, they're going to be better, well-rounded animals for having it instead
Yep.
of lacking it. Will it put the antler growth on that, these bags and companies and everybody else wants you to believe? Yeah, very, very doubtful.
Yeah.
That could happen. But.
The other hot topic right now, we're kind of on that trend for spring, is foraging and turkeys and minerals. Interesting post. I think it was last week on the forum. One of the members said that he'd sent out, was it 100 letters in order to try to get some permission on farms. It was a crazy
Yeah.
number, crazy effort that he underwent. Travis is here local where I'm at, and I know what the landscape used to look like in terms of getting permission. You're obviously in a much different circumstance down south with some of those big, large hunt clubs and
Right.
huge tracts of lands. A lot of guys are undertaking, whether it's turkey permission this year or just even thinking ahead towards deer season. You and I both have had our own tactics in the past. I have shared on the forum a trifold kind of brochure that you can create that
Yep.
says this is who you are and this is how you go about. I actually just took to mailing out a couple letters last week. I've been looking for, I want to mix it up a little bit, and obviously with the girls, I'd like to have some places closer to home, but
Yeah.
preferred tactics on getting permission. Everybody kind of
Yeah.
approaches it different ways.
Yeah, for sure. And, and really, I think it comes down to the tactic and the person, right? Everybody's going to respond to things differently. Some people are not going to appreciate you knocking on their door.
Yep.
Some people are never going to even read the letter. And then some people are going to sit there and, buddy, you better have packed lunch, right? Because you're going to be talking to them for a while,
Yeah.
And so I've always preferred face to face, but the numbers, I was actually impressed with the level of effort that he went through to actually, sit down and write those letters, to those landowners, introduce himself and say, hey, here's who I am, and his response rate, not that great, right? I think he got just a few responses out of 40 letters. I think he may have written more, but 40 that I know of. His first round, I think, was 30, 40. Just a couple of responses, but at the end of the day, the result was he netted out a couple of nice properties.
Yep.
And so you got to go through, you got to put in the work. And then it doesn't stop there, right? There's the maintenance part of that. Some people are busy, farmers don't have time to talk. Stop by, give them a ham and a gift card, case of beer, and they love you for life, right?
Yep.
Other people, like, you better be stopping by once a week, once every couple of weeks, to sit on the porch and talk, or they're going to be blowing your phone up because they're maybe older or lost their spouse, nobody to talk to, right? Yeah. So, every person is different. I will say probably the lowest, rate that we've had is knocking on doors, just stopping, walking up on the porch, knocking on the door. I mean, you can be dressed nice, clean, but you just never, you try to avoid dinner time, all those types of things, but you just never know what they're busy with, what they have going on in their life, and the amount of time it takes with each one. Think about if you had to do that 30 times in person, that gets hard, to find that one or that two. So pretty much the most successful that I've seen personally with friends and myself is just networking, getting to know people that don't even hunt, and you're going to deal with people that are like, oh, well, my aunt has some property. I'll put you in contact with her. And you're like, yeah, and you foster that. And her aunt calls you and she's got 6 acres right outside of town,
Yeah.
And,
Right.
when the leaves come off, you can stare at people's windows, like, and, or they're like, you should hunt my back porch. They're in my yard every night. And you're like, no, not really what I'm looking for. But
right.
So you're going to have to cut through a lot of that, but networking by far is the best because, if you trust me and that person trusts them, you're already way ahead of the curve into being trusted by that person also. So it's just the human nature of it all versus me knocking on your door. You don't know me from Adam.
Right.
I mean, I could tell you 1,000 different things, and I get it, you know. So
Right.
the letters were very interesting. Knocking on doors just doesn't seem to work too great anymore. But networking, getting to
Yep.
know people, the right people, you know.
Yeah.
So
Well,
seems
and
to be my
COVID adds a layer to just knocking on people's doors. It's
Oh,
not a, it's not
sure.
necessarily something I'm concerned of and at my own house in terms of somebody knocking on the door, but I'm mindful of that just cold calling on somebody and knocking on the
Oh, yeah.
door and all this age. You know, you just never know where people's minds are in terms of just a random stranger showing up in light of what the world's been like for the last year.
Right. Yeah, that does definitely add a level of difficulty, if you will, to it, because odds are the people whose doors you're knocking on are older people, you know,
Yep.
elderly, and landowners. So, you know, it gets, yeah, that can make it difficult. I haven't done any of it since, and like you mentioned, you're now living where I live. And I know a lot of people are just going to shake their head and be like, "Oh my God, that's horrible!" But everything worth hunting here is leased,
Yep.
everything. And you know, you can find properties here and there, but they're family hunt them, things like
Yeah.
that. But any larger tracts are leased and have been leased for a long time. And then what they will do is then lease the neighboring place when that comes available. So, you know, a lease may be a conglomerate of 7 or 8 different properties, you know, that these kind of people have locked up. The benefit to that is, you know, once that becomes so prolific, um, it's easy to find a lease. I can go on Facebook, I can look in the paper,
Yep.
get, you know, your lease may be, you know, $100, you know, for the year for a really kind of crappy place that's overhunted, you know, but most guys are going to spend $500 to $1,000 to hunt a pretty decent place.
Yep.
But it's usually very well organized. Also, stand sites are there. There's a sign in, sign out type process. You want to hunt here. The club, a lot of clubs, you're you know, and here it depends too, right? You can go up, step up a little bit, and then you'll have clubs that are more expensive to join, but they have maintained food plots. They have club
Right.
stands, you know, that are on those food plots, and you know, you're allowed to hunt those stands, but you can also have like 1 or 2 personal stands where you want to go put them, and that doesn't guarantee you access to that place unless that morning you say, "Hey, I'm going to hunt this," right? And everywhere has different rules. Some, you know, have antler restriction rules imposed by the club. You know, no shooting does. There are bow hunting only clubs that are here. There are clubs here that are about nothing more than because we can legally hunt deer with dogs.
Oh yeah.
You know, run them like a rabbit. Really, they don't run in a circle, but it's almost like a deer drive.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's almost like a deer drive in southern Ohio, except you're not using people to actually do the pushing. You're just using
Right.
dogs. You still have standards the whole 9 yards, but there's a good chunk of our season that's dedicated to, you know, gun with dogs, right? Buck only, doe only, rifle, that type of stuff. And there are clubs that cater just to that because you get a regular hunting club, you know, it's kind of the contention between the still hunters versus the drivers. It's the same here. Nobody likes gun dogs, you know, deer
Yeah.
dogs, guys that hunt those because they screw everything up and blah, blah,
Right.
blah, you know.
Yeah.
So they form their own club and you can find those. So if you want
Yeah.
to go hunting, you can find that club that fits your need, all the way up to going out over in the Delta, which is kind of like the prime area, Davis Island, Reagan Island Hunting Club over there, where it's a share based system, and you can purchase like 1/200 of a share for $100,000. That's, you know, but they've got 9,000 acres of pristine manicured
Yeah.
property. Breakfast is served, you know, in the cafeteria at the,
Yeah.
you know, the big
Yeah.
place. They've got a pool for the kids to swim in, you know, trap ranges. It's, you're buying a vacation home at that point.
Right.
That
Right.
is sitting in a place you can hunt. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, and yeah, so it can go way up there too. It just all depends
Yep.
what you want to find, but it is nice to have in Ohio kind of you're on that early stages of there's some leasing going on. I don't think it'll ever be that prolific there in Ohio. You know, but you still have a lot of free open private land that the landowners are willing to let you hunt. So
Yeah. Yeah. And even some nominal leases. I think we're probably going to pick up one nominally this year for, a couple bucks an acre just to help the guy pay the taxes on it. But
yeah,
looking at the farm to the north of us is 220 acres, and the market's been kind of blown for me, really, because the guys that were leasing it were paying a premium, and the farmers used to getting it. And
oh
supposedly
yeah,
somebody's going to show up with a check here in the next couple of weeks for turkey season, and if they don't, we're going to have an opportunity to get on it. And it's a little painful for me to have to write a check to hunt something, but at the same time,
boy is it.
I'm almost writing a check to keep somebody else from hunting it as much as I am for me to hunt it, because that
Yeah,
220, and it lays all the way around our 80 acres. So every bit of work and blood, sweat, and tears that I put into our farm ultimately influences that 220. And ask the guys that leased it, go look at their wall, because they got about 4 nice bucks that spend a lot of time on our farm that we put food in their bellies,
yeah,
minerals in their rack, et cetera, et cetera. And so I'm now to the point where, okay, it's been leased once. He knows he can get the revenue off of it,
yep,
and I better jump in now, or who knows
yep.
what the next group's
Or
going to be like.
Mossy Oak Properties or somebody's going to get
Yep.
it, right? And
Yep.
I've had that discussion with guys before that were very very anti-leasing too, and I told them, look, man, it's going to happen whether we like it or not. You
Yep.
know, um, that money is going to be made. Somebody's going to write that check. Somebody's going to cash it. Um, you know, just like it or not, it's kind of the way that it is. And on one side, I can't fault that farmer for wanting to make, or whoever the landowner for wanting to make money on his piece of dirt.
Yep.
That's his piece of dirt. He can do whatever he wants. And if anybody is to blame, it's really us hunters, because who the pays 25, $30 an acre? Some of these leases I'm seeing going
Yep.
for, to hunt a piece of ground. That just blows my mind. I get it. Yeah, there's some doctor down in South Carolina that's been spending too much time reading North American Whitetail and thinks,
Yeah.
Ohio's, sees the Esker boys on the front cover,
Yeah.
oh my God, I got to get a lease in Ohio, thinking it's Saskatchewan or some crazy crap. And, by and far, some great deer hunting there. Is it $30 an acre great deer hunting?
Yep. Nope.
I can't stomach that, man. I can't. And yeah, I can't. Even if I walked on that property and shot, 160-inch deer, 180-inch deer, the check I had to write, you
Yep.
know, to make that happen, just I couldn't. Yeah, I mean,
Yep.
100 acres, right? At 300 at $30 an acres is $3,000. You
Yep.
know, that's hard, man. I can go to Arizona and pay 5.5 and hire a guy to go on an elk hunt, buddy, for a
That's
week.
right. Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah. No, these guys were paying $20 an acre. I'm not going to pay $20 an acre. I have a price in mind that I'd go to, and I'm going to split it. It's not just going to be me.
yeah,
One of my good buddies is also a neighbor here, and then one of my best friends is going to end up on it. So 3 of us will split it. It's not, it helps it a little bit, but at the same time, by the time you do the math, I could go do a snow goose hunt.
yeah,
So I could do a snow goose hunt in Missouri, all expenses covered, or I guess hunt the acreage that's right there next to me.
yeah. And and I say that, but there is something to be said for it too. I did lease a small piece of property, about 40 acres, in Champaign County there for a year, and I enjoyed the heck out of it. Really did. It wasn't known for big bucks or anything like that, but the reason I enjoyed it, because I got to take my nephew out there, right?
Yep.
I got to take my wife out there and hunt. I got to go out there when I wanted to, and there was not the problems or headaches that are associated with private land hunting, landowner signs of permission slip.
Yep.
When I pulled up, to go hunting, and if there was another truck there was a problem. Like,
Yep.
it
Yep.
wasn't, oh, one or the other 6 guys that hunt this property,
Yeah.
beat me to it this morning. So I'm going to go somewhere else. And now my day's kind of in a tizzy. Um, and I didn't have to worry about any of that. I didn't have to worry about, okay, I'm going to put out some minerals and some corn here, and just kind of see what comes for my nephew, and then have some butthole, 150 yards away do the exact same thing,
Right. Yep.
because we're all kind of fighting over the same place. And I didn't have to worry with, in some places, the landowner wants you to call him before you show up so that he kind of knows who's around and stuff. I
Yeah.
didn't have to deal with that. And so I looked at it more that I wasn't paying for deer hunting. I was paying for the convenience
Yep.
of deer hunting, if that makes sense. The
Yep.
ability for me to hunt it like it was mine. And that was refreshing. That was worth every penny of I think I paid the guy $300 or something like that for 30 acres. I don't know what that, $10 an acre, So so it wasn't that much, but it was very refreshing to sit in that stand and not have to worry about, Bill, who habitually comes in after the sun, walking in there. And
I mean,
that was nice.
That's part of it for me, to your effect, the convenience factor, because with that farm laying around us on three sides, it pinched me in off a lot of those good edges. Naturally, a lot of times property lines are along edges, and that's the way it works out for us. And so then I got to, out of respect for what's going on around me, I got to cramp in. So my 80 now hunts like 70 because I've given up respect to the property line. So this allows me to branch back out. But, it's one of those farms that in the past, it reminded me of my experience when I lived up north. After I graduated from college in 2005, I moved up to Kent and lived up there for about a year, and getting prepared for hunting season, going out and knocking on doors. And I had scouted out this big farm. The farmer himself had about 1,000 acres, and it wasn't all one contiguous piece of property. They were just kind of scattered out. But he, I figured that maybe he had multiple parcels that, you got 4 or 5 guys over here, et cetera. So I pull in, and the guy's in the garage, and I go up and introduce myself and say, hey, I'm looking to get permission to hunt. And he said, yeah, that's not a problem. There's a clipboard over there on the wall. Go ahead and go over there and put your name on the list. And I go over there, and it's like 26 or 27 people on the list. And I just hung the clipboard back up and said, hey man, I appreciate your time, but you got to understand where, I'm coming from. And back in those days in 2005, 2006 down here, nothing was leased really at that point. The only thing we've had leasing around here on waterfowl for a long time. Waterfowl, anything worth hunting here has been leased for a long time from a waterfowl standpoint, but deer hunting it wasn't that way up until the last about 10 years. I'm used to having 2,000 acres scattered all over the county. And I might be one of, in the worst case, I might be on a 300. The worst case that year I had 2,000 acres was I had a 330 acre farm, and there was 3 of us that were hunting it. But, that's not that big of a deal. And I only hunted out there a couple of times, and all of us were the same. All 3 of us had multiple farms scattered throughout the county. And so we weren't just, all in on this one piece of property. And now that's the way it is now, is if everybody's just all in on one piece of property because we've lost so much access. I don't want to be number 27.
And not only through leasing, we like to look at leasing and say, well, it's locking up property that other hunters can't hunt. But, if we are honest and we look ourselves in the mirror as a collective, as a group, we as hunters have cost ourselves more access to property than leasing will ever do. I mean, you've seen it. I'm sure you've talked to landowners, and they say, well, we used to let people hunt, but, and there's always a story after that, but somebody cut a fence, somebody drove through and rutted up a field, somebody shot their barn, stuff like that, right? That we're kind of our own worst enemy in that way. And it's unfortunate because, it only takes one instance like that to stop access to a property for a lifetime. A lifetime of that individual. He may let family hunt, he may have a few really close friends, but it'll never be like, it used to be, unless you really know him. And that's unfortunate because the actions of that one person who may be long gone, moved off, or whatever, it has ramifications that last decades. And so it's unfortunate. I mean, you still hear it today, when I was coon hunting, we would ask, you would think people would be happy to let you coon hunt. You'd just shoot raccoons, right? Especially farmers, you would think would let you be happy. But they are still extremely bitter about in the early 80s when coon prices were astronomically high and everybody, you're $20 a pelt. There were guys that get the old 22 and a spotlight and they would just drive around wherever Tom, Dick, and Harry they felt like it shooting raccoons, and they weren't hunting them. They were literally jacklighting raccoons all night.
Yep.
And they didn't care. They'd cut fences, drive through fields, do all of those types of things. But those individuals were associated with coon hunters because that's the action that they were doing.
Yeah.
And I guarantee you can go talk to a farmer that's lived there to this day, and we're 30 something years, almost 40 years later, and he's going to say no, and they have a disdain for coon hunters, a lot of them, because of that 40 years ago,
Right.
Coon hunters, they drive through my field and cut my fences and, all that kind of, you're like, you just can't overcome it. So
Yep.
it's unfortunate. And then on the other side of that, the fortunate way is, you've got those guys that won't do it, but I guarantee you they'll cash a check.
Oh yeah.
So does then that property become reopened to hunting?
Right.
And, there's 50 million ways you can slice that tomato.
Yep.
So.
All right, man. We're running up on our time. Another good conversation. Hopefully, I think we got one more episode to record before we get to do a group episode from Paint Creek. So I'm looking forward to being able to get us all together here in a couple weeks. It's gonna be nice to get out and kind of get together again. We haven't seen everybody since October in Stroud, so that'll be good. I wish you safe flight up here in a couple weeks and a good little mini turkey tour.
Right. Yeah, it'll be good actually. Surprise. I sent something back. I had family down last weekend. Father-in-law drove in, a couple other family members. We had a real full house, had about 8 people down. So I sent some stuff back with them for Paint Creek. So
nice.
I'm not going to divulge what it is, but there's a big gulf out here.
Perfect.
Might be an alligator in a box. Who knows?
I love it. Yeah. Full circle. That's what they call bringing it full circle. We might have a dinosaur in a box for Paint Creek. So
that's perfect. Perfect. All right, brother. Will you be safe out there and happy hunting, man?
Yep, I appreciate it. If you're not following us yet, you can find us at The Ohio Outdoors on Facebook and Instagram. The forum is available at theohiooutdoors.com. Please stop by and make yourself at home. We look forward to seeing you. Thanks all.
Thanks, everybody.